But you talk about democratic accountability. Now, the arguments you're making here were heard a lot 8 years ago in the Brexit referendum. One of the arguments for doing that was, look, we pretend that the House of Commons is in charge of our laws, but when you actually go back and have a look, you'll find out that these are EU directives that we can't really change, that we're stuck in an apparatus that the British people can't vote out. So would you see Brexit as a vote to restore, then, democratic accountability, a vote against the system, the deep state, call it what you will?
Yes, I would. And I remember after the Brexit vote, hearing people in my constituency talk about the vote and saying, that was fantastic, we put 2 fingers up at London. So they weren't just celebrating the fact that we'd left the EU, they also thought it was a strike against the London bureaucracy or London telling them what to do. So it was a general frustration with the way things are and the fact that things seem so hard to change.
But in the book, you write about how you opposed Brexit. You were supporting Remain at the time.
Yeah, I was kind of on the fence at the time, and I spent quite a lot of time thinking about what to do. And my basic logic was that I felt there were all these reasons I went into politics. Making Britain competitive again, cutting the size of government, cutting taxes. That was what was a real motivating factor for me. I wanted Britain to be economically successful. I was passionate about education reform. I was an education minister, and I thought, would leaving the EU be taking up time of that agenda? How much could we actually achieve? I don't think as well. I was DEFRA secretary at the time. I don't think as well I'd quite understood how embedded that kind of EU bureaucratic culture was in the Whitehall bureaucratic culture. So what we've effectively done on leaving the EU is expose the fact that Whitehall itself is a unresponsive bureaucracy, whereas previously everybody was able to blame it on the EU, and it's certainly true. The EU is an unaccountable bureaucracy. But now
the feelings of a Conservative government now stand exposed. Well, basically, if you don't like immigration now, you can't point to the EU and blame that. The only person you can blame for immigration levels, amongst many other things, are now those in power in the Conservative government.
So I think the decision to leave the European Union was the right decision. And I'm pleased that decision was made, even though I didn't advocate it.
Well, you campaigned against it.
Well, I had to decide which side to be on, and there was a combination of factors.
But I just put to you that then it could be said that you were part of a deep state, that you were part of the problem to which you now position yourself as a solution.
Now, a bit difficult before the 23rd of June not to mention the EU referendum. I'm sure people in this room would be horrified if I didn't talk about it. But I do think that the decision on the 23rd of June probably will have a greater impact on the food and drink industry than it would have on any other part of the economy. That's because if we look at trade, the food and drink industry exports 60% of all its products to the EU. If we look at particular areas like lamb, 40% of all the lamb that is produced here in the UK goes into the EU market. That represents 97% of lamb exports. Now, why is that? Well, it's because that we have the single market. And what we know is that countries outside the single market, whether it's the US, where I was recently, or whether it's China, still don't allow quite a lot of our fantastic British foodstuffs into those markets. And of course, the Great British Food Unit is working to get entry for new products. But that is why that European market is so precious. Because we share the same regulations, we share the same rules over things like food safety, over animal health and welfare, over bottles. And the whiskey industry, and I've been doing a bit of a UK tour recently, the whiskey industry will tell you how important it is that because we share those regulations over bottle and labelling, they can simply export their products to Paris just as easily as they can sell them in a supermarket in Preston. Now, if we were to leave that EU single market, what that would mean is that those products would face additional costs in getting them into those markets. And it would mean in some cases that we could see markets close. And I've had a lot of people say to me, well, surely the European Union won't close its markets. But it's fairly recently that, of course, the French closed its markets to UK beef. And we had to fight in the European Court of Justice to get British beef back on French menus, because there is a policing mechanism in the European single market to make sure that if a product is complying with those European rules that we've all agreed, then we are able to sell it. So that is a very important message. And now the reason many of those investors want to invest in the UK market is because we have access to 500 million consumers. Yes, the UK is a hotbed of innovation, but we are also a passport into that wider market. Now, I've spoken to many of investors who are saying that they would be concerned if they invested in the UK, whether it's in R&D, whether it's in capital to improve our productivity, whether it's in new production, and I want to see more investment in areas like dairy processing capacity. I think we've got massive potential here in the UK. They would be worried about whether or not those investments continue to have access to those single markets. And the Out campaign has been very clear. They said they don't want to be part of the single market. I think that's a real worry for investment.